I got that message at 3 a.m. Just 3 words. You still feel? I bolted upright, like someone had slammed a fist into my chest. My heart was racing, not from fear, but because I knew everything had just changed. I'm a wife, a mom to 2 amazing kids. I live in a beautiful house in Boulder, where everything is orderly, clean, and quiet. I have a good husband. He never forgets my birthday, always remembers to buy milk for the kids, knows how to tweak the thermostat when it's freezing, and kisses me goodnight every evening. But there's one thing I haven't wanted to admit. I've lived in stability for so long that I forgot what it feels like to truly be alive. That message came from Liam, the man I once loved so fiercely I lost all reason. That love used to make me cry from sheer joy. I let him go because I thought life needed a safer harbor. And Ryan, my husband, was the place I thought I could anchor myself. But those 3 words, seemingly harmless, were like a mirror, reflecting a part of me I've buried for the past 10 years. Reflecting questions I've always dodged. Who am I? What do I really want? And the scariest one, am I betraying myself? Right in the middle of the life I call happy? I didn't reply to that message. I put the phone down, but my mind couldn't switch off like a light. I lay there, next to my sleeping husband, the glow of the bedside lamp casting a warm hue over his hair, but my heart was out of sync, somewhere else, where memories started knocking. I closed my eyes, and it all came rushing back, like an old scratched-up film reel, vivid despite the wear. I remembered those days in New York, when I was freelancing, surviving on cold coffee and burning deadlines. I remembered Liam, the man who stormed into my life like a whirlwind. He was messy, hot-headed, unpredictable, but he made me feel alive, not just existing. Every touch of his was a wake-up call. Every look he gave me seemed to say that I, yes, me, was the one he chose. Not because I was good, but because I was real. But Liam was also the reason I couldn't sleep soundly. He was too free, too reckless, and I, caught between love and peace, chose what I thought I needed. Someone who could build a home, raise kids, pay insurance, and remind me to grab a raincoat. I don't regret it. Ryan is a good man, the kind anyone would dream of marrying. He never raises his voice at me, never skips dinner over a fight, never leaves the kids alone at midnight when they're running a fever. But the problem is, we're living side by side, not together. We kiss out of habit, sleep next to each other because it's routine, and talk like we're running a small logistics company called family. I used to think, that's what marriage is, until that message arrived, and I realized something in me hasn't died. There's a part of me, the part that once burned bright, rebelled, craved life, still whispering in my chest. Elena, are you still there? The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I went to my study, dug up the unfinished drafts I'd buried since our second kid was born. I typed a few lines, deleted them, typed again. Not to write a book, but to see if I could still hear my own voice. And then I broke down, not for Liam, not for Ryan, not out of guilt. I cried because I'd abandoned myself for far too long. From that day on, I started living as if 2 women were coexisting in one body. One was the Elena of now, the mother, the wife, the homemaker who set aside her writing dreams to tend to her family. The other was the Elena I once knew, the fiery woman who lived by instinct, unafraid of mistakes, unafraid of love. Those 2 selves began clashing inside me every day, every hour. I didn't tell anyone, not my friends, not my husband, not even myself, not fully, but I felt it clearer than ever, in the way I spent more time on my makeup each morning, even if I wasn't leaving the house. In the way I picked out that old dress Liam once said looked good on me, just to stand in the kitchen brewing coffee. In the way I started listening again to the songs I loved in my 20s and felt my heart stir. I knew those feelings were dangerous. I knew it wasn't fair to Ryan. But what scared me most was that I no longer knew which part was real. One weekend when Ryan took the kids out to play ball, I was home alone. I sat down, opened Facebook, and in a moment of weakness, I clicked on Liam Carter's name. His profile popped up. His hair was longer. That rugged charm was still there, but something was different, more subdued. I saw a photo of him in Brooklyn, a photography exhibit he'd organized. Next to him was a young woman. Nothing like me, nothing like anyone I'd ever seen in his life. I didn't know what I felt in that moment. Jealousy? Self-pity? Or just a slap to wake me up? But then, I did the thing I swore I'd never do. I messaged him back. Sometimes I still feel. Do you? I wasn't expecting anything. Maybe he'd changed. Maybe he didn't care anymore. Maybe I was just playing with fire. But a few hours later, a message came. I always did. Even when I shouldn't. I read those words over and over, as if they held something I'd been missing for years. Validation. Confirmation that someone out there still remembered me. Not the role, not the title, but the real me. I put the phone away, sat still for a long time, and then I heard the door open. Ryan and the kids were back. He walked in, smiling. Want pizza for dinner tonight? I smiled back. But inside, I felt myself drift one step further away from him. The days that followed felt suffocating. Not because Ryan did anything wrong. He was still the man any woman could rely on, showing up to every parent-teacher meeting, always taking out the trash on time, and never running the dishwasher when the kids were asleep. But I started to feel like I was the one who wasn't there anymore. I smiled when I was supposed to, said the things he expected. But inside, I felt like a shadow, both running away and trapped. I tried to pull myself back to reality. I scheduled a date with Ryan at the old coffee shop where we used to go out. I wore the white blouse he liked, put on a touch of lipstick. I told myself, don't be stupid, you have everything. Ryan showed up, sat across from me, his face tired but his eyes gentle. We talked about the kids, about Ben's bad math grade, about the furnace needing a replacement. And then, in a quiet moment, he looked at me for a long time. You okay? He asked. I blinked. That simple question, it caught in my throat. I'm fine, I said, just a little tired. He nodded, didn't push further, but I saw it in his eyes, the look of someone slowly losing something he couldn't quite name. That night, while Ryan was in the shower, I went to my study. I opened my email, something I'd avoided for weeks, and there it was, an email from Liam. I'll be in Denver next week, a photo exhibit, one night only. If you want to see me, just stand at the back of the room like the first time we met. No pressure. I just want to see you again, really see you. I stared at the screen, read it over and over. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. I shut the computer off, went back to bed. Ryan was asleep, his back to me. I lay down, tried to close my eyes, but in my head, every word of that email echoed like a knock in the dead of night. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe because I felt myself fading in the harmless kindness. Maybe because I wanted to be chosen again, not as a wife, a mom, a dependable person, but as me. And so, I set an alarm for the day of the exhibit. Just to watch from a distance, I told myself. Just to find a part of me that's been asleep. But deep down, I knew. There's no such thing as just when your heart starts speaking louder than your reason. That evening, I told Ryan I was meeting an old friend, a colleague from my writing days. He nodded, not a hint of doubt. It's been a while since you went out. Go, have some fun, he said, then kissed my forehead like always. I drove to Denver as the city lights flickered on. It was cold. The yellow street lights spilled across the wet pavement, shimmering like memories that hadn't quite faded. I didn't know what I was hoping for, seeing Liam to say goodbye, or to prove to myself that I'd truly let go. The exhibit was held in a small gallery, old brick walls, warm golden light. I stepped inside, trying to stay composed. Strangers chatted and laughed around me, but all I could hear was my heartbeat, each thump sharp, almost erratic. And then I saw him. Liam, he was standing a few steps away, still those eyes, deep, quiet, and achingly real. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at me. And me? I couldn't find words either. Thanks for coming, he finally said. His voice was lower than before, maybe from time or from things left unsaid. I gave a small smile. You haven't changed. You have, he said, but that's not a bad thing. We walked along the photos. He talked about his journey these past years, the places he'd been, the things he'd seen. I stayed quiet most of the time, listening, feeling, seeing myself reflected in his stories and in the way he looked at me. Finally, he stopped in front of a black and white photo. A woman stood on a pier. Wind tossed her hair wildly. Her eyes gazed into the distance, uncertain if she was waiting or leaving something behind. I took this last year, Liam said. I call it the one who stayed. I turned to him. Who is she? He looked at me. His eyes, they were the answer. My throat tightened. I know you didn't come to start over, he said. I just wanted you to remember. Before you chose something safe, you were someone who risked everything for what you felt. I nodded, and I lost her a long time ago. He paused, then shook his head slightly. No, Elena, she's not gone. She's just waiting for you to let her live again." I turned away, not wanting him to see my eyes welling up. A little later, I said goodbye. No hug, no kiss, no looking back. I don't know if I did the right thing, but driving home, I felt my heart both lighter and heavier, like I'd cracked open a door and didn't know if I had the courage to close it again. When I got home, Ryan was asleep, but on my desk, I found my journal, open to a middle page, and there in his handwriting was a single line. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be real." I stood frozen, clutching the journal, and for the first time in years, my heart shattered, not for the man who left, but for the one who stayed, always right here, waiting for me to come back. The next morning, the house felt different. No usual chatter from the kids, no kettle whistling or toaster oven ticking. I stepped out of the bedroom and saw Ryan at the kitchen table, coffee mug in hand, his eyes fixed on the window, like he was staring through the glass to some place I couldn't reach. He turned when he heard my footsteps. "Sleep well?" His voice was soft, calm, but in that calm, something made me shiver. I nodded. "Pretty good." "You're up early." He didn't answer right away, just set his coffee down and slid it toward me. I saw it the moment I looked down, my journal open on the table, the page with the last line I wrote last night. "Tonight I'm going. Not to betray, but to remember who I used to be." I swallowed hard, looked at him. "You read it?" My voice was quieter than I expected. Ryan nodded, no trace of anger, no throwing the mug, no barrage of questions. He just stayed silent. "Are you mad?" I asked again. He looked at me, his eyes not accusing, but sad. Deeply, achingly sad. "No," he said, "I'm just sad that you didn't tell me sooner. I'm not mad that you saw Liam. I'm mad at myself for letting you feel that alone." My throat tightened. I didn't know how to say it. I whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping everything steady, not hurting anyone." Ryan sighed. "We've been so busy keeping the peace that we lost the truth. And the truth is, I miss you. The you from before. The you who laughed more, wrote every night, and hugged me because you wanted to, not because it was expected." Tears fell from my eyes, not from guilt, but because for the first time in years, we were really talking about us. I stepped closer, sat beside him. "I don't know when I changed," I said. "I just know that when I look back, the person in the mirror wasn't..." Ryan took my hand gently. "Then, if you want, let's find her together. No pressure, no expectations, just try. I won't promise I'll get it right from the start, but I don't want to lose you, Alina. Not because you're my wife, but because you're the only one who makes me want to be a better man every day." I cried, this time, for hope. We didn't kiss, didn't wrap each other in a dramatic embrace like in the movies. We just sat there, hand in hand, in the early winter morning light, warmer than any thick blanket. And for the first time in years, I felt, maybe this marriage isn't dead. It's just been asleep. And now, we're both ready to wake it up, bit by bit. 3 days after that conversation, Ryan handed me a small envelope. I opened it. Inside were 2 plane tickets and a handwritten note, folded in quarters. I unfolded it, his handwriting, still neat. Every stroke as clear as the man himself. We're starting over, not because we were wrong, but because we forgot. 3 days, no kids, no kitchen, no roles, just you and me, and the things we used to love. I smiled, half surprised, half moved. He didn't promise to change, didn't write a single flowery word, just simply, "I'll try with you." And maybe, for me right now, that was worth more than anything else. We sent the kids to their grandma's. For the first time in 9 years, I packed a suitcase without folding tiny swimsuits or remembering to bring a favorite stuffed animal. The flight was just over an hour to Santa Fe, the city of art, old stone streets, and rustic air. The place I once jokingly told Ryan, "If I retire, I'll live here, write short stories, and eat cornbread all day." We rented a small wooden cabin. No TV, no plans. Just the glow of the fireplace, the sound of wind slipping through the windows, and 2 people who hadn't sat down to talk in too long without an alarm or a mom. "Dad!" interrupting. The first night, we just sat together, each holding a glass of wine. I asked Ryan, "Did you ever think we'd end?" He shook his head no. But I was afraid. We'd keep going without being ourselves. I looked into his eyes so familiar, now strangely endearing. Not because he'd changed, but because, for the first time in ages, I saw him not as a husband, but as a man, with desires, fears, and even wounds. The next day, we walked to a nearby hill where a lone old oak stood, Ryan stopped, pointed at the trunk. Dozens of small wooden tags hung there, each one a wish, a pain, a memory left behind. He handed me a tag. "Write," he said. "Anything you want to let go of." I wrote, "The fear of not being myself." Then he wrote, "I didn't look." We tied our tags to the branches together, said nothing, just the sound of the wind and a lightness in my chest I hadn't felt in so long. The last night, we lay on the wooden floor, sharing a thin blanket. No one mentioned the past. No one asked what happens next. We just touched each other, with glances, fingertips, slow breaths. And I realized, happiness isn't about shining forever. It's about someone patient enough to sit beside you in the dark until you find your own light again. The last morning in Santa Fe, as I was packing, Ryan came over and placed an old leather-bound notebook in my hands, the kind I used to love when I first started writing. I frowned, flipping to the first page. My handwriting, messy and fragmented, an old draft I'd forgotten I'd ever written. I looked up at Ryan, about to ask, but he spoke first. I found it in a box of old stuff in the attic. I read a few pages and couldn't stop. He smiled, but his eyes were slightly red. "I think this is you, the one who writes words that make people sit still and read them twice." I froze, not because he'd read it, but because he still remembered the person I'd forgotten. He went on, "You asked if I ever feared we'd end. I'm not as scared of that as I am of the day you disappear, even while you're still right beside me." I said nothing, just clutched the notebook to my chest. Then he stepped out to the balcony, where the early sun lit up the wooden planks. I opened the notebook to the last page. There, in my familiar scrawl, was a line I'd written, but never truly understood until now. You don't lose yourself in a single day. It happens through every silence when you should have spoken, every time you held back when you deserved understanding, and every time you said "I'm fine" while screaming inside. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I decided I'd finish that story. Not because I needed a book, but because I needed me to come back. When we returned from Santa Fe, everything at home was the same. The small jacket hanging behind the door, toys scattered on the floor, bills neatly stacked on the table. Our world hadn't changed, but we had. We stopped avoiding, stopped playing roles, stopped pretending everything was fine. Ryan started asking about the ideas I was writing. I started asking him how he was feeling, really. And we, for the first time in years, began learning to talk like two people choosing to love each other again, not two shadows trying to uphold a contract called marriage. The kids didn't notice anything huge, but one night, Chloe hugged me and whispered, "Mom's smiling like she used to." I laughed. And it hit me. Some changes don't need a proclamation. They just happen quietly, steadily. Like the way the sun rises every morning, even if no one says thank you. Sometimes, what threatens a marriage isn't a third person. Not betrayal, not lies, but silence. It's the evenings when no one asks what the other truly thinks. It's settling for good enough instead of living truthfully. We don't lose each other in a single moment. We lose each other through days of pretending everything's okay. But from those same days, if both have the courage to look at each other again, they can find each other. Deeper, truer, and more beautiful than in the beginning. Real love doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest enough to survive and patient enough to come back, even after wandering too far for too long.